Well, good Man Stuff Monday. I am so thankful you're here with us today. We are starting a new book review. Richard Rohr's The Return of Adam, The 5 Steps of Male Initiation. Quick, just a little overview of the book. Richard Rohr is a Catholic theologian, but he also has done historical, sociological study of masculinity and male initiation. In other words, what were some of the rites of passage that historically, whether it was a tribe or a city-state or various things of the past, in primal cultures, how do they bring men into the tribe of men? How did a boy transition from boyhood to now you have passed these tests and now you are welcomed into the tribe of men? You know, when men invited boys into manhood, there were certain steps of initiation. All of them had meaning and purpose behind the steps. And it was also, community approval, but also a level of community saying, all right, we have expectations on you now that we've given you the rights, privilege, and authority of a man. There's a lot of chapters in this book. We're only going to cover 5 of them. We're going to cover the 5 specifically that are dealing with the 5 lessons that male initiation teach you about being a man. But just to backtrack into one of the earlier chapters, I want to read just some thought that will get us on the page of these 5 steps of male initiation. On page 32 of the book, it says this: the entire process that we call initiation somehow made it possible for a man to experience these 5 essential truths, and they became the 5 essential messages of initiation. Message number 1, life is hard. Number 2, you're not that important. Number 3, life is not about you. Number 4, you are not in control. And number 5, you're going to die. Now, if these 5 truths come across to you as unusually negative, that might just show you how untraditional and uninitiated we are as a culture. Today we're going to review chapter 5, which is lesson 1, life is hard. In his study of male initiation, that is one of the overarching messages of all initiation practices, is letting young men know that life is hard, and not to avoid pain, but to embrace it until you've learned the lesson of pain. And one of the beautiful things about pain, both physical or emotional, is it is a gift to let you know something is a matter here. There's something you need to learn. I need to learn to not leave my hand on the stove. What is the lesson that this pain is teaching me? Death and resurrection is something that all species in the cosmos are experiencing on a regular basis, and there's only one species that lives as though we believe we can avoid it, and that's us humans. Almost all initiation ceremonies of the past embraced the concept of physical, emotional, and mental trials of those sorts to teach us that life is hard. But most people just stop there at the trial itself, and they don't look deeper to the message behind those initiation rites and practices. And one of those messages was this: life is hard. You know, one of the interesting things about almost all of the ancient initiation processes when we were inviting boys to become men was that they would occur out in nature. I mean, even now, without us really painting a picture of male initiation yet, some of you have probably already got thoughts in your mind of camping or canoeing or something of that sort, where you're out in the wilderness, you're out in the desert, you're out in the woods, whatever nature is in your locale, what you're used to, you're probably imagining that already. But it's interesting that all of the ancients would take the people outside of their civilization and really enact a lot of those initiation rites out there in nature. And there was an underlying message to that, was this: as a young man, nature is something I can't control. It's bigger than me, it's badder than me. I can't stop a storm in and of myself. Nature is one of those great humblers. I can't stop a tornado. I can't stop it from being cold. I have to, so life is hard. I need to adjust. I need to deal with it. I'm not larger or above nature. In fact, if a young man doesn't learn this early in his life, he could grow up to be somebody who is demanding and narcissistic. I need to be able to embrace there are things bigger than me, and they're not always easy. Pain is our great teacher, whether we want to admit it or not, and if we don't learn how to allow things to transform us, we will actually, instead of letting the pain transform us, we will transmit that level of pain to someone else or something else. In fact, if we don't learn that life is hard, embrace the hardness of life, and that pain is coming, he lists 5 possibilities of what might happen to us. Tell me if this reminds you of people in our modern day. He says, if we do not learn this all-important spiritual lesson, at least one, maybe all of the following things will happen. 1, we will become inflexible, blaming, and petty as we grow older. Number 2, we will need others to hate in order to expel our inner negativity. Number 3, we will play the victim in some form as a means of false power. Number 4, we will spend much of our life seeking security and status to cover up for a lack of substantial sense of self. Or number 5, we will pass on our deadness to our family, our children, and our friends. When we live naive to pain and we don't acknowledge and embrace the fact that life will be hard, we could grow into these senses of entitlement. How many of you, when you were listening to those 5 possibilities that if we don't realize life is hard and embrace the hardness of life, you've seen people who've either lived, or maybe yourself, lived in one or all 5 of those possibilities, that entitlement, this disillusionment with life because we never embrace that things could be hard, that we as men have to set our face like flint and go into this hard world and not just survive but thrive in the midst of hardness. It's funny, in our culture we act as though we don't have time for pain. We're going to medicate it, we're going to ignore it, we'll over-entertain it, we'll get past it, act like it's not really there, and we act like we can handle it maybe, but in reality we don't handle it, it handles us. In a deep and profound way, pain handles us in a way that grows us and changes us into the strong men that can be counted on, that we're required to be. On page 41 he says this: but human beings will do everything under the sun to avoid the problems of me, now, and here. It is probably what we really mean by confessing our sins and embracing our shadow. It's very hard and utterly humiliating work. What rites of passage succeeded at very well is to hold young men's feet to this purifying and always unwelcome fire. They were circumcised and wounded themselves. They did not abuse or wound others as the uninitiated always do. When life is hard and we experience wounds and it's pushing us to our limit, it actually brings us to a place where we're primed for something special. All of a sudden these wounds become scars, and they become stories, and they become badges of honor, and say, I can grow in this place, and God will get me through this, and I can trust in myself, I can trust in my community, I can trust in the tribe of men around me. All of a sudden the hardness of life and these wounds I've experienced all of a sudden become something powerful and momentous. Sometimes these wounds are the very thing that have the power to help us detach from our false self. In other words, the self that you and I have created, this projection that we want people to believe about us but isn't really who we really are. And all of a sudden these tough times, they actually help me to detach from this false self and walk into my true self. You know, a lot of men never experience their true self until sometime after their middle age. In fact, that detachment of the true self is what causes some men to go into midlife crisis. But when we begin to detach from the false self, maybe you created it as a teenager, this level of bravado, and you didn't want to be rejected, so you created this image of yourself that you're like, all right, if I create this image and I project it to others, and they won't reject me. But it's very exhausting keeping up this false image of who you are. And sometimes when you're going through these hard times in life, it creates an excellent opportunity for you to detach from this false self, this exhausting keeping up the mask and the persona that I want people to believe about me. And all of a sudden, I can be liberated and free to walk in who I was really created to be, who I really am on the inside. Richard Rohr, in his study of male initiation rites throughout time and other cultures, he said he could not find one example of male initiation where young men were not in some way either symbolically or actually wounded. And the reason why wounding was normally spun somewhere into the process of a male initiation is that a man's life is going to be hard. Life is hard. And it's not a question of whether you will actually be wounded in life, emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever it is. It's not a question as to whether you'll be wounded in life. It's a matter of when you'll be wounded, and the bigger question is what you will do with that pain, what you will do with that time of wounding. The overall message that we find from the message of life is hard and the process of male initiation, where they were put through a hard circumstance, they were either physically or symbolically wounded, wrapping it all around this one concept of life is hard, but what are you going to do with the wound? When you experience a life is hard moment of male initiation, it'll mark you indelibly, and you'll walk forward into manhood always knowing life is hard. This is coming. I can't avoid the hardness of life, but as a man, I will not only survive through the hardness of life, but I will thrive in the hardness of life. And as a member of my community, the tribe of men, the family unit that I'm a part of, the town, the church, the body that I'm a party of, I will bring strength. I will bring honor, because I know that life is hard, but as a man, I'm prepared for it. I was made for this. I am a man. Life is hard. God bless you. Go take your mountain.